All right, this is 2015, the first one of 3 macroeconomics free response questions. It's the longest of the 3. It's recommended you spend about half your 50 minutes, planning time of 10 minutes. You should be reading through all 3, sort of focus on how you're going to do stuff. You can't write anything down, but you got to use your brain to think, how am I going to answer this question? When you go, keep track of the time. That means about 25 minutes on this entire question. I'm going to take this away, put up the actual mark scheme from AP to let you know how they would answer it or how they earn their marks. You hopefully will have done this first and then check the video to see how well you are. So first question says, assume that the United States economy is operating below full employment. So draw a correctly labeled graph of long-run aggregate supply, short-run aggregate supply, and aggregate demand. Show each of the following. Current equilibrium output price level, labeled out Y1, PL1, full employment output, labeled YF. LRAF comes down to YF. You have real GDP on the horizontal, price level on the vertical, short-run aggregate supply, aggregate demand meeting in the short run to create a price level 1. Okay, actual output of Y1, it says we're operating below full employment. 1 point earned for correctly labeled graph showing AD, SRAS, Y1, PL. 1 point earned for drawing vertical LRAS at Y1 to the right of Y1. So you show your recessionary gap operating below full employment. Then it says, assume the Federal Reserve targets a new federal funds rate to reach full employment. Should the Federal Reserve target a higher or lower federal funds rate? They should target a lower federal funds rate. That's just trying to lower the interest rate. That would be increasing aggregate demand. Given the Federal Reserve action you identified in Part B, draw a correctly labeled graph of the money market and show the effect on the nominal interest rate. Interest rate, quantity of money. Money supply 1. If interest rate's falling, money supply has to be going up. Right? This is your diagram. 1 point earned for drawing correctly labeled money market graph. 1 point earned for shifting money supply curve to the right, showing a decrease in the nominal interest rate. That's what the Federal Reserve targeting a lower federal funds rate would do. Question D, policymakers pursue a fiscal policy rather than a monetary policy in Part A. Assume marginal propensity to consume is 0.8 and the value of the recessionary gap is $300 billion. If the government changes spending without changing taxes to eliminate the recessionary gap, calculate the minimum required change in government spending. So if we're $300 billion short, okay, and the marginal propensity to consume is 0.8, we know the multiplier is 5. Okay, and we get that marginal propensity to consume is 0.2, 1 over 0.2 is 5. So if we spend $60 billion, okay, 300 billion divided by 5 equals $60 billion. That's what we would want. You earn your points for that. Then it says if the government changes taxes without changing government spending to eliminate the recessionary gap, will the minimum required change in taxes be greater than, smaller than, or equal to the minimum required change in government spending in Part D1? Right, then you should state the minimum required change in taxes has to be greater because you don't get the initial spending. And when government spends, you get the initial outlay. Now let's say they spent $60 billion, you get that first $60 billion. If there is a $60 billion tax cut, okay, that means I get a benefit, but I also am saving some of that. We're not initially putting that $60 billion into the actual market. So then you have to explain the tax multiplier, which is the marginal propensity to consume over the marginal propensity to save. 0.8 over 0.2 equals 4 is smaller than the government spending multiplier, which is 1 over MPS, which is 5. That's what you put in the first part. Because part of the initial increase in disposable income is saved. Your final question, assume government lowers income tax rates to eliminate the recessionary gap. Will each of the following increase, decrease, or stay the same? Aggregate demand. 1 point would be earned for stating aggregate demand increases. Right, if we are lowering income tax rates, consumption is going to go up. You could also argue investments will go up, and there's no change in input. Income tax rates will increase disposable income, consumption and investment go up. But then it says, okay, what's going to happen to long-run aggregate supply? And this is where you just have to be consistent with your answer, but 3 answers would be acceptable. So we're lowering income tax rates. What should happen? Well, long-run aggregate supply stays the same because that doesn't change inputs. Okay, it stays the same. Or Long run aggregate supply increases in the long run. This is a supply side argument because lowering taxes, increasing saving investment in physical capital because of increased incentives to work. Or you could argue long run aggregate supply decreases in the long run because lowering taxes leads to a crowding out of private investment. Probably the one you'd be most prepared to answer is the first one, but you just have to have a legitimate argument. They're all legitimate arguments based on different beliefs in macroeconomic policy. I hope this helped. Thank you very much for listening.